Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester with you to go through all the action in British basketball this week. Obviously, we were off last week, Dave, for the international window, and things went really well, unbelievably well for Great Britain, winning away in the Netherlands to secure their berth, and then a big win in Newcastle against Czechia means they actually moved up and into just been confirmed into pot five, so they actually rose up a ranking in terms of their where they come out. So
There's one
that's
team we should beat.
well, yes, indeed. It also means that the fans might be going to Cyprus instead of Latvia as well. So
Yeah, well, if the Russians will let them into Cyprus. Um, yeah, I mean, it's difficult to actually put a proper skim on the achievement, because that was not an easy group.
mm,
You know, the and people, oh, you just have to beat the Dutch in Holland. Well, the Dutch beat the Czechs.
mm.
The Dutch should have beaten the Greeks in
Yeah,
Holland,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I did
you
think. Yeah.
know. Um, and you're playing in what appeared to be a hostile environment, which was, oranged up for the day.
Overrated.
Yeah, exactly. And you're doing it off basically, a 4-day camp
Mm,
whereby you're pulling in players from around Europe, not probably all the players that they would have wanted. Um, and they came out and held the team scoreless for 7 minutes,
mm.
which in international basketball doesn't really happen.
No,
Not in a game.
not certainly not in European basketball when you got two teams of a
Two teams
similar
are similar.
ilk. Yeah.
And kind of what that tells me is that the level of preparation, and buy-in from the players was enormous.
Mm,
Because you don't get that, that's a detail. The first, I've said before, the first 5 minutes of a game, you try and script out and you try and figure out what's going to happen.
mm.
To hold a team scoreless for that long and ultimately to win a game whereby they couldn't make a shot
Yeah.
apart from Amin Adamu, they had open shot after open shot, and whether it was the occasion or the tightness or whatever, they really couldn't make a shot. But to win it the way that they did, and to win it through the togetherness and the competitiveness that Philip and Wheatle showed,
Mm.
throughout, um, I thought it was an immense achievement. I really did. And I think we underrate it, or it's just Holland.
I didn't write any of it down, but there's zero chance you can win a game with the shooting numbers that they had. To be
They were
honest with
5
you,
of
it just
26 or
yeah, it's
27 from three.
just
And
mad.
then from memory, you have to, and Carl Wheatle made the made one
Right at
with
the end, yeah.
55 seconds to go. 55 seconds to go, you're down two or down one or two, you're on the road, and Carl Wheatle, who astoundingly is only 26 years old.
Yeah, he seems to have been around forever.
He's been around forever. Who is one of, and what I've seen, I haven't seen many better defensive players across the whole of Europe when he's playing for GB anyway. But who, for his club in Italy this year, is shooting 21% from the 3-point line,
Mm,
16 of 77, right? Yet for GB and EuroBasket, it is shooting 55% from the 3-point line, like 13 of 24, something like that.
mm.
And to come round a screen, see the guys not up, and just to pull up and just to kind of cold-heartedly, Lillard, like, just basically drain a shot and take the air out of the building with
Yeah,
55 seconds to go.
yeah.
That doesn't come from just Carl Wheeler making a play. That comes from years of work in the program. That comes from Carl Wheatle saying, I'm not just here for the ride. I'm here. I want to go to Eurobasket. I've been in this for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, the age group programs. That comes from the muscle memory of that. And then having, Tariq Phillip kind of take over at the end and get the basketball and make a play. It was wonder. It was an immense achievement. Um, and an underrated achievement.
Mm.
That qualifying out that group was not a given in any way, shape, or form. and qualifying to the point whereby now, as you say, we get up a pot. We have the opportunity to add. We have players we can add now, just like
Yeah,
other teams
yeah,
players they
yeah,
can add.
yeah, yeah.
We get we can get competitive, and I moving on. Anything else about that game?
No, I think just it was, to be honest with you, it was the grittiness, it was the gutsiness, it was winning a game that really, as I say, the numbers say they shouldn't have won.
In the environment, probably said
Yeah,
they should have
yeah.
won as well. So that was that, and then in the meantime, the Greeks sneaked one off the Czechs happily.
Mm,
Well, it doesn't really make that happily for us for the Monday game because the Greeks were down. It's actually just talking on basketball side of it. You know, do you foul or do you not foul when you're up three?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
all the Shenny for us, he fouled up three,
yeah,
and they got 3 point shot off, and the guy missed one. Yeah,
yeah,
so really at that point, don't foul. In the other game, the Greek guy Toliopoulos, Satoransky, Czechs are up by three. Satoransky missed two foul shots with 9 seconds left. Toliopoulos comes down and pulls up with 2 seconds left and makes a running off balance 3 point shot whereby he could have been fouled at half court
yeah.
by the game. So in that game, they didn't foul and they should have. And in the first game, they did foul and they shouldn't have,
Mm.
which just tends to show that really nobody knows.
Yeah, indeed.
You know,
It's outcomes based.
it's outcome based, exactly. So, so anybody who gives you a definitive answer on it isn't right. Um, I very briefly, I was allowed into they practiced at Newcastle on Sunday, and Mark and Andreas very kindly let me sit right in the top corner of practice and just watch. I didn't do
Mm,
it, didn't no interaction or anything like that. And the the manner in which they practiced and just the togetherness of the whole group, that everybody involved, and Dan Clark is there, Kieran Chara is there, everybody on the basketball side, just the togetherness of them was
mm,
so impressive.
mm.
I'll say that. And then they come to
I
Newcastle.
don't think that's a coincidence, by the way. The fact
No,
that the two people you named there, the fact that they're involved in the hierarchy, you they both through their careers brought people in and together and actually supported the team, the players, the coaches through. I don't think it's a
no.
coincidence that those two people are involved, and
They
that is
have
the
and
outcome.
they understood the culture, not just
Yeah,
of basketball in the basketball in the UK, but they also played at a very high level abroad, so they know
yeah,
it should be done. And they know how it's expected to be done abroad. And for the first time in forever, to use
mm,
quote Elsa, for the first time in forever, we're in a situation whereby we have the UK basketball running through the heart of our men's national team.
mm, mm,
That's from Kieran to Dan to Mark to Andreas.
mm.
And I know Andreas is Greek, I think, but it doesn't matter. He's been here for so long, he
Yeah,
counts.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And when I talk about Kieran and obviously Kieran and Dan had storied careers, and Mark and Andreas had done it the other way.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Mark's
From the
been
bottom.
Division Three, and
Yeah.
and basically had to fight their way up through the leagues and been in all sorts of different environments. But what we have now is something which is centralized right in our culture,
Mm.
and that's the way it works everywhere else.
Yeah, yeah,
And the advantage with Dan and Kieran doing that, they know that's the way it works everywhere
yeah,
else.
yeah, yeah.
You watch the Netflix documentary
Mm.
about the Court of Gold and Steph Curry and all that stuff. You see who they're talking to about the French. They're talking to Boris Diaw, an
Yeah.
ex-player. He's running that program. Who
Mm.
they talk, the Americans obviously is Kerr and Grant Hill, an ex-player. They're running the program. The
Mm.
Sudanese had Luol Deng, and Spanish had Garbajosa, and
Yeah.
also, it's the way it is.
Mm.
And for years we've not been like that. And so moving on to the game at Newcastle on Monday, this was actually the most.
But can I just jump in before you move
Yeah,
on to the game? But it actually says something there, and we sort of bat on about the politics of it, and I know I'm the one that doesn't like doing that, but I just want to underline that point really, because actually that is the way it's done everywhere else, and those people are not just in the roles that Dan and Kieran are in. They're the chairman of the board. They're
yes,
they're they're, they're the top level, and we've kind of never been allowed to do that because
yeah,
of the structure of sport in this in this country, we've always had to appoint from cycling or rowing or athletics or wherever, because that's the UK sport framing of it. That's the way they think. You just drop and paste
Yeah,
over here, and
plug and
and
play.
and, and that's worked for them in other sports. So I can understand to some extent why they would think it would work here, but it demonstrably hasn't worked for the best part of 20 years, and actually we should celebrate the fact that those two people in particular are in the roles that they're in, having come through our program and our program. That sounds a bit
Yeah,
dry, but being players who have been successful and done the post thing and are still continuing to do the post thing, and
absolutely,
actually,
100 caps plus.
yeah,
And yeah, you do. You're right. Obviously, we've talked before about who picks the pickers. We've talked about the time served stuff. We've talked about the civil servants. We've talked about the people circling the various committees to get the grant, to get the gongs. It's always been the same. And, eventually we ran out of performance director eyes. We ran out of people who couldn't do it. We don't have an athletics coach doing it anymore. We get banned for life. We eventually ran into the point whereby happily, I say happily, Dan decided to retire, which gave him a window. And with his, with his influence, with his knowledge, to be fair, with his contact with his dad, obviously he's been high levels in international basketball. You can't push him away.
mm,
And Kieran, particularly what he does for the Scottish program,
mm,
for the Scottish side of the program,
mm.
it's important. It's Great Britain. It's important that we have a Scottish voice. Again, he is a people person. He is somebody who's got 100 caps for GB and knows what it is and understands the need. So yeah, it's
And
great.
he's a good he's a good, I think, he'd be a good
Diplomat.
diplomat as well, because he,
Yeah,
he he understands the give and the take, and the, well, we'll just do this little bit here because that's what we can do, and we won't do this bit because we're not allowed to do that, but we aspire to do that sort of thing.
yeah, absolutely. And now that brings me on to Monday night,
Mm,
which conversely was the most encouraged and the most depressed I've ever been.
mm,
In relation to the negatives first, the biggest number was O of 12,
mm.
which was the amount of directors who attended.
Oh, right.
We've got 12 directors on the board, and not one of them showed up
Mm,
for our coronation hometown
mm,
game to celebrate the achievement of getting to EuroBasket.
mm,
We're not talking downtown Kiev here. This
mm,
is the West End of Newcastle. And I appreciate that Mr. Grant had received a few words of advice from some supporters in Holland on Friday night. But nevertheless, the fact that the figurehead of the body, who is directly responsible for these teams, have got no other games to worry about,
mm,
and the people who are on that board did not choose to venture up to Newcastle to actually come and support and pay tribute to the players and the coaches who put the time in,
mm,
it is despicable. I don't care. You cannot be that thin-skinned. You cannot be that craven. You cannot be that cowardly. Ultimately, if you're worried about what people are going to say to you, stand your corner. There'll be security there. No one's going to come and punch you in the face. No one cares enough. Be blunt. This isn't a case of physical threats or anything like that. And the fact that there's no one there was just to me desperate and dysfunctional. And another, I'm afraid, another nail in the coffin of what I think of them.
mm,
We've talked about that previously.
mm,
So, we'll not go over the ground about that. But, argue your corner, show your face. But if you're a director, and if I'm on UK Sport, I want a report from one of those directors as to what happened at that game. Did it work? Is it commercial success? What's the environment like? What's the court side like? What's the feedback people saying? I want to know how our money's being spent. I'm not getting that off the TV.
mm,
And so, yeah, the operationals people were there. Eddie McKinley has been involved for years with GB basketball, was there. Um, Kieran's there, Dan's there, all of that, but the board aren't.
mm,
And they're making decisions.
mm,
It's abhorrent. So that was the disappointing thing. Um, Everything else, it was actually the most I've enjoyed any of the GB games in Newcastle, for a couple of reasons. One, the the production of it was really good. And this is where, I probably give the board maybe a little bit of credit, albeit they weren't responsible for it. Um, the two gentlemen who came up from London to run the game ops were brilliant.
Mm,
That we had the videos being used, we had the Subway sandwich T-shirt throws, we had everything. We had the crowd getting behind the team, we had the appropriate level of encouragement for a FIBA game. We had an absolutely perfect environment, and the gym was basically full on a Monday night in Newcastle, basically full, about two and a bit thousand. Um, but the game, I thought was just so impressive. And yeah, and the Czechs didn't have Satoransky, and Balvin had gone off on a frolic of his own by the sound of the coach in the game in the interview afterwards. And they played a lot. He played a lot of his kids and his young guys.
mm,
That's fine. But it was the first game there um, that I've actually felt not only do we know that we belong, we belong, we know that we belong.
mm.
And specifically, what impressed me most was actually the guys who didn't play on Friday night because Mark
Yeah,
played a very short rotation on
it did.
Friday night.
Yeah, yeah, very short.
And so you come in and suddenly, Josh Hibbert comes in the game, 3 minutes in the game, first touch drains a three. He played a minute on Friday night.
Mm,
You know? Then Pat Whelan, who didn't play on Friday night at all, comes in, first two touches, shoots the ball with confidence, drains a two threes. Jabril Bello, who's been through a couple of windows now and hardly played
mm,
in those games. Suddenly he's coming in because obviously Gabe were qualified and Gabe's played his 3 or 4 minutes. He comes in, he drops 21 points on 9 shots,
mm,
right? Jelani Watson-Gale, again, hardly played. First time he touches, first touch of the basketball, dribbles up, pulls up, knocks down a three. The point is that these guys could be sulking.
mm,
They could be pouting. They could be thinking, this isn't for me, particularly Jabril, who's played behind Gabe and Dan Aiken and hardly got a minute,
mm.
right? Even to the point whereby in Holland in the second half, Mark went to Miles Hessen at the five.
Yeah.
Jabril, to get to spell Gabe Olaseni. And the fact that they played with such confidence and togetherness and commitment when they hadn't played in the first game, that speaks volumes to me
Mm,
of the connection that you've got. And so it isn't going to be about with EuroBasket just bringing an ex-superstar in from here and naturalizing a guy from there.
yeah.
It's going to be somebody who adds to the group. And the test is, are you there to play? Are you there for the ride? Well, they were there for the ride on Friday, but they
Mm,
didn't pout about it.
yeah.
They got straight into it and they came back and they made plays. Everybody on the bench, all those other guys, they were delighted for them.
Mm, mm,
And that was the most positive thing for me, that you get that, 21 and 5 out of your third in 23 minutes out of your third string center who's hardly played.
mm,
That you're getting, SLB level and Whelan and Hibbert and Ward Hibbert and other guys that you're getting international performances out of them whereby they're looking like they can play. Maybe not massive minutes if you're going to win, but they're going to play because they're dialed into it. And again, that speaks to the culture and the commitment. And even in this game, they held Czechs to like scoreless in the first 3 minutes.
mm,
First 5 or 6 possessions. So the same thing I say about the Holland game. So I was massively encouraged by that. And then what happened was Mark in the beginning of the third quarter, he put his kind of killer five on, and Luke Nelson was in rhythm and Tariq Phillip gives them so much because he gives them a little bit of cockiness, a little bit of
mm,
swagger.
mm,
And I can't see anybody else being our naturalized player, to be honest, other than Tariq Phillip,
mm,
because he gives them something they don't have, which is like, we belong.
mm,
And I just thought it was great.
mm.
And I think they won by winning by 20. I think they get an extra coefficient point or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. That was the difference.
That was
It
the
moved
difference.
them up above the Swedes, I think it was, by half a. Check out Philip Brown's tweets. He's
Yeah,
done it. But I think it
right,
moved them.
done.
The 20-point win, winning by more than 20, gives them extra coefficient points, which moved them up half a place, half a point up and on Sweden, I'm sure it is, and then that moves them from pot six to pot five. So it had
So,
a
yeah.
huge impact. As much as I did take the mick out of Philip on Twitter for
Does that
being
actually get us?
so yeah, yeah,
Why?
it was
Why does that?
literally
Why would that get us to Cyprus instead of Latvia? I don't get that.
because we're now in the same pot as Latvia, I
Yeah.
think, and we're Cyprus are in pot six.
Wow, the same pot as Latvia.
I think it's literally just came out about half an hour ago.
All right, that's the team
Yeah.
who, were like in the World Cup, weren't they, last year? And then Porzingis. Oh,
You're now making me doubt myself, but
yeah, I'm thinking
we're
they're a bit.
definitely not in the same pot as Cyprus, which means we
Well,
can. No, we're
Cyprus.
not in the same. We're not in the same pot as Latvia. I'm talking
No,
rubbish, but we're not in the same pot as Cyprus, which means we can go to Cyprus.
absolutely. And given that
Yeah,
Cyprus
yeah,
got beat by 40 by Croatia, who didn't qualify,
yeah.
let's be clear, Croatia just say it didn't qualify.
Latvia are in pot two, so I'm
Yeah, I
talking
thought they would be.
total.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
Um,
It's uh, I don't know. I've lost all track of it, but yes,
yeah,
we
oh, cool.
we can definitely. We weren't going to Cyprus, and now we can go to Cyprus.
That's right. Okay, that's
I
yeah.
think is the thing.
Latvia in the summer is lovely. I gather.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Um, so yeah, so 100, 100 times credit. We are not. It is not a given that we qualify for EuroBasket. We haven't won a
Mm,
game there for God knows how long.
mm,
The fact that they did and the manner in which they did, as a group, as a 12 or a 13, and without forgetting, of course, that Quinn wasn't playing.
mm.
Quinn
Yeah,
hurt his ankle, and
yeah,
to,
yeah.
to win that game in Holland without your starting point guard as well in the fourth quarter, it was very, very impressive.
Mm.
Really enthused.
Shall we move on to the
Yeah.
SLB?
Yeah, why not?
Let's start on Wednesday night. London Lions 78, Manchester Basketball 73. Herman Mandalay in as coach for Manchester. Obviously, Soko, the first of his 3 game suspension. Tu Holloway in. I'd written down here that Flood didn't play, and I wasn't sure why. He obviously didn't play yesterday. There's some speculation from Pat on Twitter that he's no longer on the roster, but I've not heard anything
Mm.
official around that. But he obviously wasn't playing.
I was going to ask you that question, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Well, let's go with the first two things, shall we? First, um, the Soko ban is just to me, is just befuddling. I'll be honest.
Mm,
We have this, just so people understand, we have this point system, which to me again has no logic whatsoever, none at all. You get a game ban for 10 points and a game ban once you get to 20, and then another game at 25, another game at 30, another game at 35, another game at 40, another
mm.
game at 45. Nobody actually knows what makes a point, as to what level it is. But what we know about this was that Ovi got 18 points
Yeah,
in.
when you say nobody knows, what we have some, except it's a new league and all of that, but
Yeah,
the rules are not too dissimilar. We have some historical precedents in that basically an ejection is 9 points and maybe 10 points depending on how serious the ejection is deemed to be, and three or 4 points is usually sort of flipping the bird off to the crowd or something
I love that usually
along
sort
those.
of. That's not the
Yeah.
way,
No, no,
us
no.
10
But
boys.
there's not a written down. If you do this, this will be the thing. But
No,
in essence, we've got a
why not?
sense.
Why not?
Basically, you know you're going to get nine or 10 points if you get ejected from a game.
Yeah, well, I get
If you
that, except
punch somebody, you're probably going to get 15 or 20.
well, apart from this, you Duke and Duke got 9. But the point I'm making is Ovi got 18 points for his push of the guy in whoever it was in the wall in Bristol,
I think it was Keedy Johnson, was it?
Edie Johnson. Okay, he got 18 points. Now I don't know what the difference between 18 points and 14 points is. It just seems to me to be totally arbitrary. Whatever. And he quite properly got suspended for a game for that. I got no problem with that. And I don't imagine even if you asked him that he would, to be frank.
Mm,
It's something you can't do, and it was a dangerous play. Um, in relation to, and then apparently got 3 points at Manchester, suspended for a bit of something which no one saw. So I'm assuming
mm,
that was your flipping the bird type of thing,
mm,
right? So that would take him, once he gets ejected again, that would take him to 21, and then potentially another 9 for the ejection would get him up to 30, which would get him the bans, which accrue at 20, 25, and 30.
mm,
Um, the twist with Ovi is he appears to have appealed, and it's the appeal body who has given him those points. I don't know if there's more than that. And I went back and watched it again, I'm not sure. I can't see how, fundamentally, even working on an accumulation basis, right? An accumulation of bad behavior basis, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I do not get how pushing somebody into the wall full speed can be one game and basically standing up for your teammates when somebody's hit one of them.
Mm,
I didn't throw any punches that I saw or anything like that
mm.
in that incident. Can be three. Yeah, I just find that utterly nonsensical.
But is that not the threshold thing that it's three, and that if he'd not been banned beforehand, he would have got one game?
Yeah, well, very possibly. But the point being is, it doesn't. The behaviour is um, undeniably less serious, less effective, less dangerous, right? Yeah, because of the points that he gets, um, the punishment becomes disproportionate, and that's because you have this kind of irrational, from my perspective, threshold of 20, 20 10. It's like a tennis match, 15, 30, 40 game, 10, 20, 25,
See,
30.
I have less of an issue with that because to me then it's recidivism, isn't it? It's if you do something once, you get one game, one level of punishment. If you do it a second or a third time, you get a more serious punishment
Okay, so why
because
don't we
you're
go
doing
30,
it.
32, 35, 37, 40? You see, the point being, the whole
Well,
point,
to be honest with you, I don't really have a problem if you did do that.
exactly, but
Because it should discourage repeat offending, shouldn't it?
none of which, of course, is of any benefit if we don't know what the points are for.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, I
sorry.
get that bit.
That,
But
that, you know, that,
if I'm going to argue about it, number one, I don't know why it took as long as it did. I don't know why it
yeah,
took as long as it did. Number two, I'd heard a whisper, as I said to you a few weeks ago, that Duke Shelton had got 9 points, and
I
then
think
it
that was
was,
announced.
and
Yeah,
then it was 3 weeks later that we found out that he got nine points. Now I assume that's related to the fact that Ovi and the Lions appealed, but again, why did it take? I don't understand why it took as long as I don't understand why everything has taken so long to get to here. When did this happen? I can't remember.
oh, 6 weeks ago, it was under Leicester.
It
A
feels a
week
long
ago.
time ago. Uh, is it disproportionate that Ovi got more than Shelton? Yes, it is. I do feel it is. I still feel that actually the perpetrator of it or the instigator of it all didn't get
Right.
anything,
Yeah,
which is odd to me.
yeah.
I know he wasn't punished in real time, but if you're looking back to say, what did Duke Shelton do, and was that why did he do that? What did Ovi do, and why did he do that? Then can you not take into account, everything you see?
Well, let's be honest. Let's be honest about this. The reality is that discipline to the league is unfortunately something that they really don't want to do.
Mm.
And we don't do retrospective punishments. And you don't hear about that, and you don't see things happening that go beyond being looked at because there are hundreds of other things that they can be doing. And if you can't even announce your punishments, as you say, promptly in relation to disqualification issues, you're never going to get to the point whereby you're bringing a prosecution against somebody who wasn't even thrown out.
See, yeah, well, yeah, true. So this is where I mean, your argument is about football is if this happens, then that. So Anthony Gordon gets
Yeah,
sent off yesterday. He's going to miss the cup final.
yeah,
Everybody knew that in real time.
yeah.
He
It's
got sent
ridiculous.
off. He's gonna miss the cup final. Now, presumably, he can appeal. I don't think he's got much of a chance if you push somebody
No,
in
I
the
don't
head,
either. Yeah.
but
Silly.
presumably he has some sort of thing that he can do. But at least and again, it's that thing of I can't remember when it cuts off, but if you get 10 yellow cards before January, whatever, you get a 1 game ban.
Yeah,
And there's
yeah.
something maybe if we had a thing that said if you get disqualified, irrespective, you get 1 game ban, you
Mm.
can appeal it, but the appeal will happen within 3 days or whatever. Because football seems to, and again, football's got all the money in the world and all the lawyers and people, presumably, whose job it is to deal with it because they've got so many red cards and suspensions that it's a weekly
Thing.
scenario sort of thing. And in basketball, how many ejections have there been this season? Three.
And in basketball, look, if a Sheffield player or a Surrey player had been ejected a fortnight ago,
Mm.
you can guarantee that they would be appealing, so the
Yeah,
appeal
yeah, yeah,
would
yeah,
carry out in the
yeah,
cup final.
yeah, yeah,
Whether it was a
yeah.
good appeal or not. That's an untenable situation. That's
Yeah,
an
yeah,
intolerable situation from any kind of degree of sporting governance or sporting propriety. You can't delay the process. And in football, as you say, it happens within the Wednesday of the week. So Gordon can't appeal and drag it out for 3 weeks, but
yeah,
and
yeah,
get into the cup final. That'd be wrong because it would be leaving the situation up to that. And I just have a substantial degree of sympathy for Soko on this. I just think it's not beyond the wit of man to create a system whereby what you've said is, a disqualification. Okay, disqualification is a game. A disqualification with aggravating factors can be more than that.
yeah, yeah.
And,
So it
and
used to be, it
an
used to be
aggravating
a,
factor might be it's your second disqualification of the season. That's another game. An aggravating factor may be it is specifically endangers the safety of an opponent.
mm,
That might be another game. And then everybody knows.
mm,
And when Owie Soko pushed Keely Johnson at the wall, he didn't know what his punishment was going to be.
mm,
That's ridiculous. It should be written down there. If you should know.
mm.
So I think you could do it better, but I think you could do all the things that they do better.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'll keep
yeah,
it on.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Anyway, moving on. That was the first thing. Then Mandalay. Whoo.
Mm,
Right, Herman. Right. Well, he's a real coach. Let's be clear about this. I mean, he has a real resume
mm,
from Argentina, from Italy, Serie A, Varese. He I think, kind of fell into Manchester's lap insofar as he lost his job about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think.
mm,
He'd been there for 18 months. So this probably fits quite um, nicely with him and staying in work and whatever. It also is indicative of, he won't come cheap. So it's
mm,
indicative of the fact that Manchester are continuing to invest. And it was interesting that for the first time on the press release, the owner's name was actually on there. The owner was
mm,
talking about him.
mm.
We haven't really seen, I think it's Ben Pearson, but haven't really seen much of him. Certainly, probably given the interview that Jamie Edwards did, probably not a bad idea. But we haven't seen much of him. So
No.
so he's kind of putting his name to that, which is interesting. And I thought, wow, what we saw in this game was kind of the Manchester that we were meant to have seen for the past 2.5 months,
Yeah, yeah,
in reality. And what we saw on the sideline was kind of a whirling dervish
yeah, yeah,
a whirling dervish of intensity,
yeah, yeah.
and kind of fiery eyes,
It's
and
got that Latin,
Latin kind of
yeah,
Latin kind of yes, like I'd like to think it was like a young Paternoster, but Rob was never quite like that.
no, no,
Even then, Rob's more kind of Italian explosion. This guy,
mm,
Herman, was just boom, 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 boom,
yeah,
boom,
yeah, yeah,
up and down, hands and everything. I'm thinking to myself, verbal descent, visual descent, how much of this? Um, and also, quite wonderfully, it only took him until I think the 21st minute of his first game before he was making the TV sign to the ref
yeah,
on the
yeah,
side. We don't have
yeah,
replay here, Herman. I'm
yeah,
sorry, we
yeah.
are something of a backwater.
It,
Um,
it was pointed out to me, by the way, and I won't name the person who pointed it out to me. That in one of the FIBA, I think it was FIBA Europe Cup quarterfinals, first leg, that they did the review system on an iPad with YouTube, and the referee was sort of swiping to get it forward and backwards. And just the point was made to me that I'm sure we'd even be able to manage that.
I'm sure we would. It's legitimate, yeah. And so he was, yeah, he was that. But in all seriousness, I mean, this is it's a high level appointment, you
Mm,
know. And it was really interesting to see that the first, the first things that he'd identified about his team, I thought were all spot on in
mm,
the corrections that they were making, which was one. We got a small team, so we got to defend, not a small team, but an athletic team. So we've got to defend athletically and aggressively. So they were
mm,
right out on the high screening rules.
mm,
They were flying up, they were all over the court, whatever. Number two, we got too many players. So I got to make some decisions in relation to who's playing and who's not playing.
mm,
And at the moment, Cody John seems to have won the backup guard minutes over Nick Lewis,
mm,
right? And he's not playing both of them to see how they get on.
mm,
It's one of the, he's going with the guy that he wants. Number three, we got a lot of scorers, but we got to space out and we got to know, we got to have an idea as to who's going to get the ball and when. And they did that with their energy
Mm,
and with putting the ball in Ashton Langford's hands, and just suddenly looked, the ball moves a lot better.
mm,
Sometimes the ball doesn't move because there's nowhere to move it to.
mm,
That makes sense. So if everybody's not spaced in the right place, you can't move it. And I thought the ball moved so much better in kind of the screen and roll in this game with them.
mm,
They didn't win,
mm.
but they were, they were 100 times more connected
Yeah,
and
yeah,
playing like playing like a team with, top four budget, top four talent.
yeah, yeah,
That's what they were. And that was so that and that obviously and he actually said in his interview on Sunday before the game, he said, yeah, well, it's all right doing that the first game for a new coach, but where they're going to be
yeah,
in
yeah,
the second game. So there's obviously the new coach bounce, that type of thing.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
thought they were playing entirely to the skill sets of the players that they had. And more importantly, the players weren't pouting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's.
So,
I mean, you obviously get that thing of new coach comes in at the beginning of March. Basically, you've got two options. You either go, it doesn't matter to me. I'm just looking for my plane ticket, or you go, oh no, here we go. Let's reset. I've got a fresh slate. Let's go again. And it certainly
yeah, I mean,
looked like the
I
latter.
mean, I mean, if you're looking at the players, you think, oh wow, well they've done great there, they're motivated, they're all that stuff. Yeah, okay, but you just lost seven in a row,
Yeah, yeah.
At the end of the day, you shouldn't need someone to come in and motivate you.
No, no.
You should need someone to do that. You should be doing that for your previous coach,
Mm,
right? So there's kind of, so you don't give the players the kind of a bouquet
mm.
about this. They're doing, to use Roy Keane's phrase, they're doing what that's their job.
That's what they're supposed to do.
Really, that's what they're
Yeah,
supposed to do.
yeah, yeah,
And particularly, as I say, top four talent, top four budget, that's what they should be doing,
yeah.
So, but sometimes it does need a pot stirrer,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and he's going to stir a few pots.
He certainly is. Let's run through the game then. Irvin and Afeje starting for
Yeah.
Manchester. Hadzibegovic obviously into the starters with Soko suspended. London had 6 turnovers in the first 2:30, and that was all about Manchester's defense, really. But it was still 13-8 to London at that point. Manchester then had 15 in a row in the second quarter to go from 28-20 down to 28-35 up, and that was the point at which, as you say, the ball was popping.
Yeah, and London, we talked a lot about Manchester. London, as I say, they've got a little bit of the death march going on, but they're still, a little bit more fragile. Certainly, bringing in Holloway in particular, who's a new guard to play the backup minutes behind Peterson. And and when Bozic he's got a deep bench, so he's having to use it. But there are times where that deep bench doesn't come off, and particularly where they go through droughts.
Mm,
And against a Manchester team playing like that, playing with that degree of energy and a defensive athleticism, the drought, you could see it kind of coming.
mm,
But London have probably, very possibly the deepest team, but certainly probably the best um, starting five in the league at this point in time. I think certainly defensively, but potentially the way Peterson is coming into his own, and what we generally forget how good Rye is,
mm,
and how long Delaire and Begovic are. I
mm.
mean, they are just serious, seriously
Bobby
long.
Planuta certainly forgot how long
Yeah, exactly.
Delay was on Sunday.
Exactly. Just how, how big and skilled they are. They're they have the chance to be really, really good. Um, but the bench still, up and down a little bit. I'm not sure if Adebayo played in this game. I'm not sure if he did. Certainly he didn't play on
He
Sunday.
didn't play on Sunday. I can't
No.
remember if he played in this game.
But so
Matt,
go on.
Manchester were up 10 just before halftime. London were 1 of 8 from three at
Yeah.
halftime, bearing in mind Manchester was 6 of 12 at the same point. But they did get it level in the middle of the third quarter, and then had 7 in a row to lead 64 56.
Yeah, I just thought the size, London's size just wore Manchester down a little bit. And the energy that Manchester played with, and the coach is kind of getting to know his players and figuring out um, who's going to be there at the stretch. Also, I think they suffered because Ashton Langford went down with an injury. he didn't play towards the end of the basketball game, which probably hurt them as well.
5 points from Cody John got it to 3 with 6 to play, but London always seemed to me to have enough to win the game.
Yeah.
Anything else? I was just going to go on to the
Not
scores.
really. It's Wednesday. It's so long
Yeah,
ago.
yeah, it's not long ago. Hadzibegovic, 19 points, 8 of 9 shooting, 11 rebounds, and yet still a -8. That's the
Ouch.
bizarreness of the plus minus. Rye, 15 points and 6 rebounds. Brisker, 11. Holloway was 1 for 6 from the floor, 3 points, 3 assists, and a team high plus 12 in 16 minutes.
It'll be interesting because, to be honest, for a guy who's played everywhere, he doesn't look to be in the best shape. But then again, I looked at it on Sunday and I thought, well, actually, maybe that's just what he is.
Mm,
That's his body. That's the way he plays. What he does appear to be is a guy who's never sped up.
mm,
And he's not going to, come down the lane and crash one on your head, but he's going to shoot the right shot and move, make the right play. And if he's open, he's going to knock it down. So I think my assessment of him is just a typical kind of Bozic style pro who's just
mm,
going to do his job and not take anything off the table for his team.
mm,
Because that's the way he's built the team. He's not built the team against around a ball dominant point guard.
mm,
It's Jordan Taylor, then it's Tyler Peterson, and now it's him as well.
mm.
Um, so yeah. Overall, just another signing for the death march. Yeah. Mm. The
Mitchell
stormtrooper.
16. Yeah, another stormtrooper. That's it. Mitchell 16, John 15, KO 14, 15 points and 4 steals. So to Friday, Bristol Flyers 67, Newcastle Eagles 85. Sheffield was back after his concussion absent. Walsh, though, was out for the Flyers. 4 points from Louis, threes for Johnson and Sheffield, a 10-2 run to start the game. Incidentally, I'm not sure why the 2 wasn't an offensive interference, but anyway. But actually, really, there
That
wasn't.
when Del Pesh pulled
Del
down the
Pesh
rim
pulled down the ring and he missed a dunk and pulled down
and
the
pulled
rim. It
down.
went up in the air and then went in. And I'm
Did
thinking,
he let the rim go before the ball went through it?
uh, I think he had, but if a defensive player had done that, it would have been called an interference. So I don't understand
Was
why
the
he did.
I remember thinking I didn't watch it back, but I remember thinking it didn't look right.
Yeah,
But he wasn't holding onto the rim as the ball went through it.
yeah.
So if the ball is up in the guards waiting to come down off a dodgy bounce, can you play the drums on the rim?
I
I don't.
I I
I'd be
did.
surprised if
I,
you could.
I did. I asked the question on Twitter and nobody came back to me.
Uh,
But the example in the thing, I'm just finding it here, is A2 grasps the ring when the ball has a chance to enter the basket. The ball enters the basket. So the interpretation for that is no point shall be awarded. The game shall be resumed with Team B having the throw in. The only thing on that is the example they were giving, A1 was shooting, not A2, these being the
yeah.
players on the teams. So whether the difference is if it's A1, because obviously he was the one shooting because he went for a dunk. It just to me it looked like it should be an
Yeah,
interference, and I couldn't
if
work
the
out
ball,
why,
yeah,
but I'm assuming
I
it
don't know what
wasn't.
the rule. I mean, if a defensive player just kind of the ball's at the other end, and the guy decides I don't want to run up there, I can't pull. I'm just going to
Yeah,
stand, jump at the rim, and pull the rim down the whole time.
yeah,
But the only reason why he couldn't, the ball's not about to go in. So
yeah, yeah. Well, you're
that'd
not allowed to swing on it, so you'd have to keep letting
probably
go
be a
of it,
technical,
obviously.
wouldn't it? You have to go
Yeah,
up and
yeah,
down, yeah,
yeah,
pointing it. Yeah, and it's never going to
yeah,
happen. But
yeah.
anyway, yeah, no, Bristol. Couple of things. Bristol, Newcastle starting out games very, very lethargically at times this season. They haven't really come out of many games and really kind of set themselves almost like it's a feeling out process for them. Um, and both teams, you give them a little bit of slack because they've got 2 weeks off.
Mm,
Always give teams slack when they've had 2 weeks off. Um, but yeah, it wasn't a great start for Newcastle. Um, Louis obviously Louis is probably the X factor for this team now. And I'm not quite sure how far he is going to take them, but he's going to have to take them as far as they're going to get, I think.
mm,
Because the teams have kind of wised up a little bit to Keedy. And Keedy, who shot 6 of 28 over the 2 games,
mm,
really isn't kind of providing the veteran. He's only a second year to be fair, but kind of the leadership and kind of that they would want. I don't think his decision making is not great at the moment. So a lot of it is going to come down to how good Louis is and how much he can kind of cajole the team moving forward. Missing Walsh and obviously also Thomas Edwards. And by the way, shout out here for another fan of the show, Angela. That's Evan's mum. If you're watching, spoke to Evan's dad at the GB game.
Okay.
Apparently a big fan. Apparently I explained the game far better than he ever could. So there we go. That for me is gold dust. Thank you. You go up on the wall of fame. So hi Angela. But seriously though, they do miss Evan and Ralph Thomas Edwards as well, obviously, because it gives them certainly Evan gives them that extra aggression and another guy with a step and another guy to kind of inject a little bit of energy and to score off the bench when he plays off the bench. And we've already talked about what Thomas Edwards gives them. So they're just a little bit light. And when you compare them with what Newcastle have coming off the bench, which is, Knight, um, James, and and Cole Long, that's two 40+% 3-point shooters and one of probably the top five individual scorers in the league.
Mm,
It's not really a particularly fair matchup, but
mm,
when you don't have Walsh and Thomas Edwards, and I thought Newcastle kind of wore them down a little bit.
mm.
Also, Okora either does not like Bristol, but he does like playing them.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
He
yeah,
certainly
yeah,
likes playing because he hasn't missed a shot against Bristol for
yeah.
about all season.
So third quarter, 6:22 to go. Delpesh goes up for a dunk. He's blocked by Lewis, lands all his weight on his right leg, and it looks like his knee buckles. And you could see from the reaction of Okoro right next to him how serious it was. And he was calling straight for the physio, and obviously a long delay, and he leaves on a stretcher, and it didn't look good.
No, it's desperate. Great play by Lewis. But it's always when a big guy comes down, if it doesn't just jars the wrong way,
Mm.
there's ligaments in your knee. You don't know. You have to hope it's not an ACL or something like that, but you don't know, do you?
No,
Um, you know, so all the best to him, and
yeah,
obviously it's his ex old club as well, so he'll know
yeah,
everybody there.
yeah,
And it's a massive loss for Newcastle. But
yeah,
he's not been anywhere near dominant for the past couple of months. He's been eating up minutes that they need to have eaten up.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
15, 20 minutes a game
yeah.
that they need to have eaten up. And again, particularly with the European game on the horizon.
Mm.
And the fact obviously he's British, so you couldn't replace him even if you could.
Yeah,
Um, so that's a real but more than anything, anybody gets it. Well, I think he's getting an MRI today, so
yeah. That's what they
dead.
said.
So fingers crossed for him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Around that injury, Okoro had six, Ward Hibbert had four. It was a 10-0 run, 37 uh, 49. Flyers did get it to four at the end of the third quarter, but James, Okoro, Long hit threes, and Eagles sort of eased away in the fourth quarter, early in the fourth
Yeah,
quarter.
as I say, they're a whack-a-mole team sometimes. Newcastle, you stop one guy and you miss another guy, and the next guy comes on the bench, and suddenly James is attacking and scoring, and they're just kind of when they play well, they defend. If they don't defend, they're not built to win scoring races. I don't think. But if they do defend, they can kind of really kind of frustrate a team. And I think that's what they did with Bristol. And Bristol's, as I say, with two guys out, they need Keady, and Keady cannot go 3 of 15,
Mm,
in a game for them to have a chance of winning.
yeah.
And yeah, not great. Two more advertisements for replay in this game, I thought. There was a No, sorry, I'm thinking about the wrong game. No, but ignore that.
Okay.
That was Sunday's game. Um, and probably the biggest thing that happened, the biggest thing that happened in this game was that Cora came down on Sheffield's foot and didn't play at the end of the game.
That was Sunday.
No, no, it
Oh,
wasn't.
in this game.
On
I didn't
Friday.
see
On
this.
Friday, no, on Friday he came down Sheffield's foot shooting a three, got three foul shots, and then he limped around for about five
Oh,
minutes,
yeah, 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 yeah. I do remember
came
that.
back
Yeah, yeah,
on,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then didn't finish the game.
yeah.
So, and then the reason it's so big is because of what happened on Sunday, because
Sunday.
I don't
Yeah,
have the same ankle, but that has an impact as well.
yeah. Louis with 21.6 rebounds. Lewis with 16 points and 6 rebounds. Johnson, as you say, 3 for 15 for 13 points and 5 assists. Okoro 19, Ward Hibbert 15, Alan Ikens 15 points and 8 rebounds. And to underline your bench discrepancy point earlier, it was 28-2 to Newcastle on bench
Yeah.
points.
That's tough best because Bristol are missing two guys who would give
Yeah,
them 20 a game between
yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah,
And you can't, you'd beat SLB teams aren't deep enough to be able to run two more guys who are giving 20 a game behind those
yeah,
two guys.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's just the way it is, unfortunately, at times.
Leicester Riders 91, Surrey 89ers 81. Limited minutes for Jalen Ray in this one. He played 12 minutes in total. A weird game. I mean, just for starters, Thompson and Delicon combined for 12 points off 4 of 16 shooting. And these are two of the most efficient. They were, I think, going into the game, they were first and second in field goal percentage and first and
Yeah, they're
third
also
in
two of the better defenders, aren't they?
well, there is that. Yeah,
That's it works both
yeah,
ways.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
But first quarter was up and down, barely any fouls, 22-24, and it all changed in the second quarter.
yeah, I mean, I think again, you give them a little bit of slack because it's a Friday game,
Mm.
2 weeks off. But I thought, Rob's vituperative and verbal assault at the end of the
I
first.
think everybody at home is now having to look up the word vituperative.
Well, so here too. I thought that told a story because um, I don't think he thought Leicester was focused as it should be.
No,
The last play before the end of the first quarter, Connor Washington went under a screen on Andrew Lawrence
yeah,
for an open three at the top of the key. I think that finally pushed the button which said, "I've had enough of this." That was the Buzz
yeah,
Lightyear button, and
yeah,
so
yeah.
he laced into them. And to be fair, he hasn't certainly not been caught on camera that I've seen. I don't think I've seen that this year.
No, no,
And to be fair, his teams they haven't really given them much to lace into them about because
no,
they've generally been doing the right things in the right way and playing the right defense.
yeah,
And I think, having lost to them in the cup, I think he rather expected that they would come out with a little bit more fire than they did.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But again, sometimes that can be rust, etc. So I thought that was kind of um, very interesting that he thought, if a coach is saying that, then that means things aren't going the way they go.
Mm,
And then the game kind of trickled on a little bit.
mm,
Um, but the difficulty for Surrey was, without Ray, with the young guys not being quite as effective, with Adelkin not scoring the basketballs efficiently, they relied very much on James to score the ball.
yeah.
And their defense was okay, but again, there were some breakdowns and some open threes for Leicester in the second half.
Bitter and abusive is the dictionary definition, by the way. Just
Oh,
so
right.
that's
Bitter and
nothing
abuse.
to,
A
yeah,
bit, that's
yeah,
probably not quite the right word. Then I
yeah,
probably
yeah.
shouldn't. Well, I think
It does
you
say,
want.
e.g., a vituperative outburst. So
Yeah, well, yeah. I wouldn't say it was. I wouldn't say he was bitter. Obviously, bitter wouldn't be right, but
yeah, yeah, yeah,
abusive is a word with bad connotations.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But I suppose if you are using abuse to basically say you guys better pull your finger out,
yeah,
that
yeah,
would count.
yeah,
I'll stick with vituperative.
yeah. So somehow Leicester were ahead at half time by 3, despite the fact that Surrey had led for most of the first half. And they turned that into 10 at the start of the third quarter. But Surrey with a 9-0 finish to the period, 12-0 if you count the first score of the fourth quarter. And they were 64-67 ahead with about 9.5 minutes to go.
Yeah, sorry, they're entirely different to actually to Newcastle, but very similar in relation to you can't quite put you kind of your hand and say, I'm going to stop that.
Mm,
And I'm going to concentrate on stopping that, and that will take them out of the rhythm because then another guy pops up to do something. But they do it a little bit more as a collective through the ball movement. But then you still have Gooden pulling up and making shots when you think you've got him guarded, that type of thing. Um, Leicester got good minutes from Shelton in this game, didn't they?
yeah, they
You know,
did. Yeah.
he had like 10 points in the first half, and I was surprised in the second half that they didn't match a Delican up with Shelton,
Mm,
actually, because I thought maybe you get a Delican going because Shelton's not as good a defender as Thompson, obviously. Um, but I think Lloyd was looking at this game to make sure no one got hurt.
mm,
He's got a game the next day.
Yeah,
To be fair, he's got to share the minutes out. And I think he would have thought that if they win that Leicester game, that is an absolute bonus.
yeah. I was a little surprised that Ray came in and then went out and then seemed to play a few more minutes than
Yeah, I
everyone
mean,
else.
he started the second half, and you
He,
thought, oh, maybe he's
yeah,
good to go. But
yeah.
look, I mean, you've got your
You
first
got a
fight.
final. It doesn't matter. Yeah,
And
everything comes down to what happens next week. So
it's your
that's
first
interesting.
final in when? And
Yeah,
how?
it's been a.
Since PG, first final.
Creon didn't Creon go to a final that was at the O2 before an NBA game? Wasn't that? Wasn't didn't Surrey play in that one?
Oh, against Everton.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
they
yeah,
changed
yeah,
the
yeah.
line. They played the NBA 3-point line.
NBA
It wasn't on
3 point.
TV, that one, I don't think. Yeah,
I seem to remember being there, so that strikes me
yeah,
as
well,
it
yeah,
was on
you're right.
TV.
They did because that was Tomo's year. Tomo was at Everton, so that would
Yeah,
be 2009, 2010,
mm,
or something like that. It was
yeah,
top or 10, 11. 10, 11 when Everton won three.
mm,
Yeah, 2010, 2011. Yeah, so 15 years. So the first and obviously they won they got the final of the All Stars Golden Buzzer.
But they did get the golden buzzer. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
did.
We were actually on the bus halfway home by the time they got to the
Yeah,
final.
yeah,
We were halfway down the M1. Um, but no, I mean, you just have to get through. You have to get through these games and make sure no
yeah,
one gets sent off. No one gets Anthony Gordon
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah. Well, you'd be all right
injured.
a week before, nothing will happen.
Yeah, yeah,
Leicester with a 15-2 run to lead 79-69. And then there was a couple of minutes without a score. And you just got the sense whoever's going to make the next
yeah.
basket is going to be decisive. And it was Abercrombie with the three with 2.5 minutes to go. And that was basically the
Yeah,
dagger.
he's a little bit like Skylar Abercrombie. He's got the most gravity of any 35% three-point shot you've ever
Mm,
seen.
mm,
Because he shoots the ball without fear, and he shoots the ball when it matters.
mm,
And he has that length to get it off against basically anybody who's not defending him absolutely properly.
mm,
And he has the confidence to shoot it immediately, catches it, whatever the situation, whatever the
mm,
score. Um, but I thought, no, I thought Leicester's defense ultimately just shut um, Surrey down a little bit, and I think part of that was Surrey's rotations and all the guys that they were playing. Um,
Well, the
and
reality is they had 24 points in the first quarter and 81 at the end. So.
yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Hunter, 20.7 assists, 8 for 10 shooting, which is actually his most made field goals for Leicester. Abercrombie, 19, Jackson, 16. James, 13 of 21 for 27 points, 11 rebounds. Gooden, 11, 4 of 13 shooting. Lawrence, 11, 4 of 5 shooting. Slight difference between those
Yeah.
two, 11 points. And it was 52-32 points in the paint.
There's a lot of pressure on Gooden when Ray's not there though.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of pressure on him because um Lawrence he's generally not playing at the same time as Lawrence much. Or if he is, he's having to play that plus the starters minutes as well. So and he's a guy that everybody's focused on now, particularly without Ray being there. So yeah, it was tough.
So let's stay with the 89ers and move to Saturday. Sorry, 89ers 79, Caledonia Gladiators 71. No Kane for Caledonia, but they did have their new signings, Albert Ventura and Jet Spielman, which is the most American name of
Well,
them
I mean,
all.
there's two
Jet
things about that,
Spielman.
isn't it? I mean, Ventura was obviously ace,
Indeed.
indeed. And we know how Spielman got here, don't we?
Go on.
He flew.
Oh dear. Um,
I mean, just seriously, this must be in my, I did rack my brains. I couldn't think of a previous jet that we'd had.
no, we've not had a jet before. No,
Well,
we've
apart
not
from
had a
those
jet
guys playing for
before.
Cheshire for years. Playing
Well,
for Cheshire for
obviously,
years,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, they've gone from, yeah, they've got the two of the most generic, kind of old-fashioned Midwest American names, haven't you? You've gone from
Mm.
Stuckman to Jet Spielman. You know, oh, it's like, okay, we're gonna go. I mean, jet is a verb, isn't it? So Tanner's a
Yeah.
verb. So we're going to a verb and then a name with man at the end. I mean, it's utterly American. It's
Yeah,
brilliant.
it is. Yeah,
But yeah, sign it imports 11 and 12 for Caledonia.
yeah.
Just yeah, I mean, it's just very difficult to win when you're constantly integrating new players. Teddy Okafor wasn't there, hasn't been there for a couple of weeks. So I don't know if they've released him Don't think we've heard anything about that.
No, not heard anything.
Um, just just a whole I mean, it's not that it's hard to integrate people. It is, but it's like you're playing against teams who are already
Yeah,
integrated.
yeah.
It's a different
I covered
playing
Ventura a
field.
bit over his career, obviously in the European side of things. I think he's a very, I think he's the sort of guy they needed. That was my first take when I saw
Yeah.
they signed him. I thought actually that's a really good pickup because that's the sort of guy that they probably
Well,
needed.
I mean, I did think to them, I did think, nothing Ventura, nothing gained.
He's full of the puns today.
I'm sorry. Yeah, he clearly a solid player. Interestingly, during this game, they kind of played with him at times at the three.
Mm.
I don't think he's played at the three in the ACB much.
I've not seen him play at the three.
No,
No.
but they were playing three guards with because he clearly isn't a quick guy.
Mm.
He's 32. He's got the body, typical European kind of guard. Do
Yeah,
what you
yeah.
meant to do and do it efficiently. Um, but so you've got um, Ramsey and Whelan as well. So they're
Mm.
playing almost the three of them and playing really small. That's what Johnny was doing.
Mm.
But yeah, good luck to them. As I say, it's almost an impossible gig though.
Yeah,
This.
yeah. Ray was back into the starters for this game. Still only had 21 minutes in total. Mid first quarter, Surrey with an 11-2 run to lead 21 to 12. Ventura got his first points to cut it to 4 in the second quarter, but once Surrey got it back to 10 at halftime, that basically seemed to be that. It was the whole second half was basically a double figure game.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that there are just so many moving parts for them.
Mm,
And you want to integrate players, but you want, I just don't know at this point how they're going to manage it. When the games are running out, and you've got two more guys to fit in, then you've got Faro to come back, so that's going to change them again when he comes back. Um, and where it hurts is offense, because defensively, I think Ventura was solid, Spielman was solid. And they've got a decent size, and they play hard, and Ramsey plays hard, and Frank Bentley plays hard, and Barnes as a five has really really been quite impactful. But the offensive rhythm, you're just not going to have it
mm,
because you don't know. If you're the point guard, you don't know where Spielman wants the ball.
mm,
Where which cuts. You're not going to have any kind of rhythm with him. Um, so Ramsey has this almost impossible job of trying to direct the traffic of a team with players that are coming and going, when in fact he probably needs to score for that team.
mm,
He probably needs to be in scoring mindset, but then all these other guys aren't touching the basketball,
mm,
and so you're not going to find out what they've got. So I just find it's a and there's no gimmies. There's no one who's standing in your way saying, "Have a couple of practice games."
yeah, yeah.
Go play St Mirren. It's not going to happen. You're coming up against teams that are now grooved. And Kane wasn't playing in this game as well. So,
Yeah.
Kane then becomes another guy to fit in as well. So it's a little bit like what I said with Mandalay. You have to find out who you're going to play.
Mm,
And some of them might not,
mm, mm.
to kind of get buy-in from the ones who are.
The real story of the second half of this one, Sholovinskas appears to tweak an ankle on a drive, hopped off out of the arena. He did come back towards the end of the quarter and sat on the back. He seemed to run off or hop off to the locker rooms, and obviously the
Ah,
tournament
19-year-old scar
is now.
tissue heals
Yeah,
quick,
yeah,
doesn't it,
yeah,
though? Oh,
yeah,
yeah, I'd be amazed if he's not run out in the final. I'm telling you
yeah,
that now.
yeah.
I'd be absolutely amazed. Um, it was good for Surrey to have a relatively routine win, I think, before the final, second game of a back-to-back, etc. Um, it was almost a little bit like the England game at the GB game at Newcastle, whereby, Surrey don't win that many games like that. They won a couple this year.
Mm,
Destroyed Newcastle, I remember, for one. But to win one where you're not in the last seconds and fighting
mm,
over it, and the drama's not there, um, it kind of built a little bit of confidence in the team. But
mm.
for the final, it's going to be whether they're experienced enough to handle
Yeah,
the
yeah,
environment,
yeah,
basically.
yeah, yeah. Delican 15 points, 14 rebounds, 6 of 9 shooting on this
Yeah.
occasion. Hunt, 6 of 7 for 14 points, and James, 12 points and 7 rebounds. Ventura with 15 points, 6 of 9 shooting himself, 7 rebounds as well. Ramsey, 0 of 7 for 3 for 12 points. Whelan, 11. Spielman also had 11 points and 6 rebounds. Let's go back to Bristol, where Bristol Flyers lost 67-74 to Sheffield Sharks. Groves was back for Sheffield. James Reese, 5. I didn't know we'd got to that many
He's the fifth,
generations
is he?
for. Well, I assume that's what the V's for at the end of it. And obviously Walsh and Ralph Thomas Edwards still out.
Oh,
Bristol's first.
that's more than Kings of Scotland, isn't it?
Well, that's what I was
Yeah, King
thinking.
Henry the Second of Scotland. Oh, dear me,
You
yeah.
have to. That's consistency over a long period of time to be
Yeah,
fifth or something.
well,
We've
yeah,
definitely not
very
had one of
short.
those before. We've had some twos and some threes, but not
Yeah.
not a
There's a
fast one.
guy in the NBA, Philly at the moment, Ricky Council the fourth,
Mm,
so yeah, but the fifth is, yeah, that's good.
yeah.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Uh, Bristol's first five. We've gone into some random stuff today. We spent a lot of time on names and random things.
Names.
Bristol's first 5 scores of the game were all threes as they led 15-8. They actually started the game 7 for 10 from behind the arc in the first 15 minutes. They went 2 for 20 after that. Um, they made their seventh three of the game. Was the score was 35-20, which was the biggest lead of the game. So while they were knocking down threes, they were in total control.
You know what I'm going to tell you, don't you?
Yeah,
Good night
yeah.
back to
Rhythm of
back.
the night before. Yeah,
Rhythm v legs.
yeah,
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 the rhythm for the night before, and then the
yeah,
legs wear off.
yeah,
It's the tale as old as time.
mm,
And you've got to try and do it on defense in the second half. And to be fair, Sheffield were 2 weeks off moving into that game, and Bristol had the night game the night before, so Bristol were in a rhythm and ready to play and ready to knock down shots and all that type of stuff. But Sheffield kind of grew into the game a little bit once Bristol's unfashionably hot start kind of
mm,
wore off. Um, Sheffield are interested. Sheffield, fascinate me a little bit now because they had effectively 5 guys play 30 minutes from memory. I'd have to close to 30 minutes certainly. Um, and the starting lineup is really intriguing because it's McGill and Nixon and Clay and Coutinho and Anderson. And McGill and Clay have got this kind of synergy going on clearly. And Nixon's a guy you just can't lose. You can't let him out of your sight. At any point. But it only works because Anderson and Coutinho are two of the rare type of professional players who don't pout when they don't get the ball.
mm,
The ball is not, so they go back, they run back, they play defense, they rebound, they recycle the ball, they pass it, and they run it again. So in
mm,
this game, ultimately, McGill, Clay, and Nixon, as if to prove that point, carefully researched,
mm.
scored 56 out of the 72, 74
Four,
points.
74.
74.
Yeah.
So only 18 points scored by anybody apart from McGill, Clay, or Nixon. And what I'm intrigued about is how that lineup, which is clearly working at the moment, because they're grinding teams down. They're not making dumb mistakes. They're doing what Jamel's done for years and what Jordan Rottino has kind of done, where he plays 34 minutes. He scored 2 points and he's a +7.
Mm,
They're doing that with that, and then they've got this kind of panoply of talent with Jeffries to come back, with
mm.
Reese, a new guy to integrate, and the other guys off the bench as well.
Groves.
Rod Glasgow and Ocherobia and all those guys, and Groves. That's 10 deep,
Mm,
seriously 10 deep. So how is that going to pan out in relation to those other guys who are probably certainly the new guy American's going to want the basketball.
mm,
Groves obviously struggled in this game, but it was his first game for 6 weeks.
mm,
So you're going to get that. So he missed a few layups and turned it over and that type of thing, but he's going to get back into his rhythm because he is good. But they are at this point in time so comfortable. Those 5 are so comfortable playing together that basically Atiba rode that 5 a long time in this game,
mm,
and particularly in the second half. And they're playing now at the sharp end. They're playing for the league.
mm,
So for them, everything is under the microscope, and they're not fully formed. because they've changed a couple of times. They've had Chapman. Chapman's replaced by McGill. McGill's doing great. Clay obviously has come in and has become a dominant big guy. But now they've got Jeffries has come back. They've got another new American to come in. Groves is now coming back. So they've got to reintegrate those guys in. And they're in that situation whereby they have to reintegrate players, but they also have to play with desperation because
Mm.
you're in that situation that we were in so often, whereby every single game matters. Whereas the
Mm.
teams you're playing against, they can take a loss. That
Yeah,
makes
yeah,
sense,
yeah, yeah.
you
Makes
know.
total sense.
So how that works. So yeah, I mean the McGill Clay thing is tough. You know, McGill did not have a guy like Clay last year at Newcastle.
Mm.
Um, and it's tough because Miguel has the ability to do the unorthodox
Mm.
and make a pass or shoot a floater or step back, whatever. Um, and team, how teams defend that two-man game is going to have a significant impact
Mm.
on how Sheffield go. Bristol, I just thought they ran out of legs.
Yeah, yeah.
I just thought they ran out of legs.
Sheffield had a 12-0 run early in the third quarter to tie the scores 46-46, during which time Andres called two timeouts in a minute and a half, which you don't normally see in the third quarter. Uh,
Yeah, I'm a fan of that.
mm.
You know, I think, there's a time when the game.
I would be a fan of it if you had like five, but
No.
I don't like the idea of leaving myself with one at the end. But
I think there's a time when the game is being played.
yeah, it was being played right there.
And and that point in time is, you're up 50, you're giving up a 15-point run,
Mm.
or whatever. You know that you're going to be struggling for legs.
Yeah.
You want to seize them. There's only so many runs. We talk the game, we call basketball a game of runs, but there's only so many runs in a game, right? And so Sheffield have their run, and what
You're forgetting Caledonia against Surrey
yeah,
from
sorry, yeah,
a
yeah, I'm
few
indeed
weeks
where there
ago.
are where there's just an infinitesimal amount of runs. Um, or indeed the 1938 Test match at the Oval where England came in 3 for 7 and then Hutton scored 364.
Mm.
And a lot of runs. But sorry, as opposed to obviously the Great North Run every year where there are a lot of runners.
Yeah,
Um, but you want to break that run,
yeah.
and you need to break that run at that point
To
because
be fair, it felt like Sheffield were going to get away at that
yeah, and
point.
that's the point I'm making. So
Yeah,
you do everything you can
yeah, yeah,
at that point. There is no point saving them if you're not going to be there at the end.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
You're not
sometimes,
calling a timeout in the last minute down 15, really.
well,
Or
exactly,
if
yeah,
you are,
and
it's just pointless.
if you are, it's not right. And so you just got to find a way. Now the argument is always, well, could you not have done that via subs? The
Yeah,
problem he's got is that he's got no bench.
no bench. Yeah,
Oh, no bench. In that game, Leslie Smith didn't play either.
yeah.
So you've got Evan Walsh, Leslie Smith, Raf Thomas Edwards out. Your bench is basically, I think, McCormack and Samuels.
Mm. Didn't
Samuels
Landolfi play a few minutes
Landolfi
last
played a
night?
little bit,
Yeah,
and Ekwe played a little bit in the first
yeah,
half.
yeah, yeah.
Basically, did not play like a guy who'd watched Prentice Nixon score 29 points on them in the previous game because the first time he's guarded Nixon, he steps back under the 3-point line, and Nixon takes one look at him and drains a shot. And so it's hard to get you guys who haven't played in and to get them playing and doing that against a team like that, a team like Sheffield. So instead of using the subs, you use a timeout to try and do it. So yeah, and then from that moment on, it just seemed just a little bit preordained, I thought.
It felt to me like they were going to get away,
Yeah,
but they didn't. So let's just go through
yeah,
the end. It's a 1 point game with 2.5 minutes to go. Clay free throw and then a dunk off a really nice pass from McGill. Talking about the two-man game, put Sheffield 65-69 up with two to play. Robinson then missed, but Lewis got fouled on an offensive rebound. 1:41 to go. He missed them both.
yeah, that's
Uh,
a killer.
yeah, that's a killer.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
killer. Legs.
Uh, Nixon with a tough shot miss. Johnson misses a quick elbow jumper. Rotino then misses a layup, but Anderson with an offensive rebound, and McGill basically iced the game with the layup with 30 seconds to go. But again, it's that Anderson play you talked about. What do you?
Anderson play actually, yeah, go get a rebound, go get a ball, but it's the defense. They're all missing. They held them 67. Anderson and Routine are pretty good defensive players,
Mm,
and to have two guys who don't want the ball and don't stop playing because they're not touching the ball is really, really a luxury. What I will say about Bristol is, Robinson's big for them. If Robinson knocks down that 3-point shot, they become a very different team. The pick and pop 3-point shot at the top of the key. If he's knocking that down, then everybody is spaced out and the crowd gets going, and they're a tough team to guard because you can't pack the lane on Keely Johnson.
Mm.
Um, they got to get Marta Johnson. I don't know if he's hurt. I don't know if he's got his, it's March and he's
He's had the
where his head.
shoulder
He
taped for a
has
little
got
bit
that.
as well.
But I just see, he was a legitimate first 3 or 4 months of the season, a legitimate MVP candidate. He was
Mm.
leading the league in scoring until a couple of weeks ago.
Mm.
He can't be 6 of 28 in 2 games. He was 3 of 13, I think, in this game.
Mm.
He cannot be that. He's
Mm.
too good for that. He can't be shooting 50% from three and then go 0 of 9 over a weekend.
Yeah, yeah.
There's so either he's not healthy, and he's strapping it up for the benefit of the team, as you say, and just doing what he can. But when they're so short of scorers at that, then at the end of the day, he's gone through 6 of 28, and they've been held to what 60, what then
67
67,
in both games.
67 in both games at home in that gym
Yeah,
at the pace they play.
yeah.
So health means a lot, but. They're a young team, Bristol. I think we forget how young they are. They're all, apart from Evan Walsh, basically, they're all first or second year pros.
Mm.
I don't know what Louis is, but the rest of them, G. Johnson second year, Lewis and Robinson first year. Smith's been around, but he wasn't playing in this game. Thomas Edwards been around, he wasn't playing in this game. The American guys are Sheffield, the second year pro. They're and they play a lot of games.
Johnson 15, Robinson 14 and 7 rebounds, Louis 14 points. Nixon 24 points, 12 rebounds, McGill 18 points, 7 assists, 3 steals, Clay 16 points. Reese, by the way, played 10.5 minutes, had 1 assist and 2 fouls. I've got some stats coming out of this uh, game. The first one is the 67 points thing that we just talked about. I got asked how many times has the team scored 67 points at home in consecutive days. Obviously, it didn't happen loads, but
Whoever asked you that needs to,
well, you know who asked me that. There's only
unless
one.
Angela, whoever asked me that needs to get a
Uh,
life.
there's only
Yeah,
one person that would ever
yeah,
ask
yeah,
a
yeah.
question like
Based
that.
in
The
Sheffield.
answer is he actually didn't ask me. He asked origami. It was the third time. Brighton in 2002, 30th and 31st of March, scored 95 in wins over Chester and Birmingham. And in December 1992, Derby scored. This is some turnaround. 90 they won 92-84 and then lost 92-124.
Ouch.
So
Again,
44 Oldham they beat and Guildford they lost to. So and it
92,
was the
93.
yeah,
That,
it was
that
it
was Guildford's EuroLeague team,
yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah.
Yeah,
Was it this? Yes, yes. They were in the
must have been
Champions
that.
Cup, I think it was called.
Yeah, yeah.
It was also the first leg of a
All
semi-final.
right,
So
so
it
they
was
put
a
the Scotland.
one-point game in the second leg, but who
Yeah,
cares?
yeah. Who cares? Yeah.
And they played again literally 2 days later or something. Um, Sheffield's ninth consecutive win. The last time they won 9 in a row was 15-16, which coincidentally is the last time they won a trophy.
Yeah.
And the stat I came up with, Bristol, when they qualified for the trophy final, so after the
Yeah.
Cheshire second leg, they were averaging at that point 89.6 points per game in the 12 matches to that point. Since then, they averaged 77 points a game. And if you take out the 122 against Cheshire, it
Yeah.
drops to 73.8 points per game. So that's basically 16 points per game differential between the first 12
Yeah.
and the games since then, which
Difficult to
Sheffield
say. I
won
mean, they're
16.
basically the same personnel, so maybe it's wear and tear. Maybe it's injuries, maybe it's just shooting variance to a little degree. But yeah, I mean, they played. They played a lot of games. They've had
Mm,
two-legged semi-finals,
yeah.
final. They've had 8 European games, and they've had
Mm,
all, and they've had the SLB games,
mm,
which they're catching up on.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Let's go
good
to.
starting though. Good
Hey,
start. Good
yeah,
start.
thank you. Let's go to Sunday. Manchester basketball 86, Newcastle Eagles 79. I was obviously watching this one in Ellesmere Port, and I was like, "What the hell is this 2 hour game going on about, Dave?" I think it was week
Yeah.
9 it ended.
Well, yeah, I mean, to be fair, it's about 10 minutes for Coro's injury, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we have to take that out of the picture.
No KO, no KO for Manchester. Obviously, Delpesh was obviously out neighboured out with illness, so Darius was starting for the first time this season, and once again Manchester with a good defensive start. A night in for Pulliam early on. Manchester with a 10-0 start in the first 4 minutes. Took Eagles nearly 5 minutes to get their first score on the board.
Yeah, Newcastle were catatonic in the first 5 minutes. And it's kind of a little habit they're getting into, um, whereby, that Manchester team is always going to come out flying, home
Mm,
game, new coach. The way they played at London would have given them confidence. And what they did was they got into the passing lanes, they got hands on basketballs. It's never good if you've got to pull your starting point guard 2 minutes into the game.
mm,
That's not, I beg your pardon, that's not a play on words on Pulliam, but
mm.
sub two
It's a
minutes.
surprise it's not, Dave, given the way you've
Yeah,
been going
yeah,
tonight.
that's true, actually.
Between
Yeah.
your thesaurus and your puns, Dave.
I don't know. Well, you've got to give them something fresh, Dan. I can't keep rattling on about mid-table BBL, SLB games, can eventually they're going to turn off, if they haven't already. So yeah, we'll try and add to the lexicon of basketball, shall we, in
Yeah,
future?
indeed.
Um, yeah. So yeah. So
I don't think in 30 years of basketball commentary I've ever used catatonic either.
catatonic goes right to with.
Maybe I'll slip it into the cup
Yeah,
final if
okay.
somebody
Yeah, I
has a
just
slow
thought. I
start.
mean, yeah, I mean, well, it was just the way. I mean, they hardly got a shot in the first 5 minutes because of the
Yeah,
press,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they had, seemed to have no appropriate fear of that.
yeah.
Oh, they can start. It's got into the habit of starting games kind of pretty slowly, with kind of doing his kind of not playing with the force that you'd want. Little dribbles into the paint and getting blocked and turning the ball over. Pulliam needs to get it into his head that he's more of a he's not just kind of a caretaker of the offense. He's going to have to, set the tone earlier than he did in these couple of games. And sometimes when you've got all these different scorers, it doesn't always work like that. And I just thought Manchester absolutely jumped on them, and Newcastle's defense was all right actually. I mean, John made a tough three, and but you can't give up 10 points because that 10 points was actually the whole game,
Mm,
because for the next 35 minutes, the teams basically played pat cake with each other.
mm.
5-0 run here, 5-0 run
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
in
yeah.
and out, up to 12, down to 6, up to 12, down to 5, time out, and that was it. And so you give a good team on the road, a 10-point start. And the other thing about that 10-point start is that, in that time, that first 5 minutes where they didn't score, Okoro touched the ball once.
Mm,
Okoro's your best player. Now, as I say, he tweaked his ankle, etc., on Friday night, but you can't be going away from, if you need to set a tone early, then he needs to be touching the basketball. So I don't think Newcastle had the appropriate fear of that game, and to be fair, they played like a team that had won, a few games in a row.
mm,
And Manchester are still flawed. Benefited probably from not having Kyle, because it meant everybody got to play minutes, which allowed them to get into a rhythm. And the whole game, Newcastle couldn't guard Ashton Lamford, particularly in semi-transition.
mm.
They
You've kind of done my bit of it, but I'll just repeat it for
yeah,
you.
fair enough.
Carey hit a couple of threes. Eagles had it down to three just before the end of the first quarter. The other thing that Newcastle had was a bit of foul trouble as well. Darius with two fouls in 7 minutes from halftime. Knight with the technical just before halftime, which was his third. 14-7 was the run I wrote down at the start of the third quarter. Manchester up
Yeah,
11, but more importantly, with 6 minutes to go at that point, Okoro drives, steps on Delpesh foot, rolls his ankle, and is out of the game.
yeah. That's and not just out again. He was
Mm,
he was carried off the court,
mm,
and carried off the court at the end.
mm,
Kind of makes me a bit concerned for the National Basketball Performance Centre. They haven't got a set of crutches there.
mm,
But yeah, that was a. I mean, two things. I mean, obviously the run came. Newcastle's start on fire beginning of the third quarter, because they changed it regularly. But Knight was on the bench for that. He would probably have started because he played well in the first half, but he
mm,
had his three fouls. And then Yeah, Cora just it's just that's just if it's anything substantial, and
Mm,
given that it's ankle, then you're talking about ligaments primarily. If it's either a
mm,
twist or a sprain, if it's a high twist or a high sprain or something like that, it could be, it's something you get over. But if it's ligaments, then it's not.
mm,
Um, and it's just one of those things,
mm,
just brutal. Um, but it's sport.
mm.
It's
Yeah, yeah.
sport, and you can't put these guys in cotton wool, and they're going to make plays, and he's going to make more plays than most. He's going to be, getting off the. He goes up higher than most. He's going to come
Mm,
down further.
mm,
Um, and so that really, I thought, hurt Newcastle. The play I was talking about, the replay play, interest. There was a play at the end, beginning of the second quarter, at the end of the third quarter, actually, probably the last play Okoro made before that, when Manchester scored, and I think Okoro went out on a run out down the other end off a long pass. And it just looked like you're coming a garden foul from where the camera showed. And then it showed you the replay from behind the basket, and DeBose kind of hits him up here on
mm,
the arm, kind of on the shoulder, as opposed to making the play for the ball. And it was, to me, if a referee who couldn't possibly see that because the referee still chased coming, it's a long pass over the basket.
mm.
Referee has replay, then that's going to be unsportsmanlike.
I
And
guess the question is, why would you go to the replay on that?
Well, you would say I wasn't quite sure because it was a basket play and he's ended up in the stanchion, whatever. I'm generally I look for these. I probably watch the Newcastle games a little bit more carefully for this type of stuff than the others. So quite often it's Newcastle I'm talking about when I'm
Mm.
talking about these things. But it applies to every game, every team that
Yeah,
has
yeah,
that has to be replayable, or even better, challengeable.
yeah,
Coach
yeah,
has to
yeah,
challenge,
yeah, yeah.
Um, so that was it. And also so yeah, but no, the injury is brutal. The only good thing about it for Mike Okoro is that I think he's proved himself this year so far. So if he isn't able to play again, I have no idea what his
Mm.
situation is or where he's going to be or whatever. But if he isn't able to play again this year, then I think he's done himself a lot of good this year
Yeah, yeah.
in his career because he's, as I say, he's been ultra impressive.
Really good.
So
Yeah,
we'll have to wait and see. So
yeah,
that impacts Newcastle as well. And at that point, you kind of get the impression that this is just not a game that they're meant to win.
yeah.
To be fair to them,
And when Cody John banks in a three on the buzzer, if you hadn't got that impression already, that was the end of
yeah,
it,
to be
really.
fair to them, they do have a bit of stick-to-itiveness about them. And Jason and Rob talked about this on the commentary. They kind of don't really go away. Manchester aren't quite together enough and ready enough at the moment to put teams away either.
Yeah,
If that
yeah.
makes any sense. So Mandalay had to call a timeout down up five, I think, in the
Mm.
fourth quarter, 5 minutes to go, and that little run at the end, and that was kind of the end of it. That little
Yeah,
run.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So Ashton Langford, 21 points, 9 assists. Mitchell, 17. DeBose, 14. They were 19 of 26 for 2-point field goals, so 73%. Alan Ikens, 15 points. James, 14. Knight and Pulliam, 12. Newcastle, conversely, 21 of 48 from 2-point range for 43%. That's a
Yeah, and
big difference in volume more than anything
well,
else.
yeah, absolutely, and kind of an individual, and that's what I like about the way that Mandalay has them set up. They got players out of Ashton Langford throwing cross-court passes to Mitchell in the corner,
Mm,
which you think would be the absolute bread and butter play, but they haven't really done it much. Mitchell running around a lot, and he's doing that because FJ is on the roll and Long's coming in and he's throwing to the corner and Mitchell's knocking down threes. But more than anything, it's the empowerment of Ashton Langford in transition and stuff like that. He is dynamic at getting to the rim. He finished at the rim better than any of the Newcastle players, and probably, outside of a couple of guys, he's probably better than anybody else in the league at finishing at the rim. You're talking Larry Austin, Micah Caro, um, at the rim. That's probably about it. For guards at the rim, I mean.
mm,
Um, because all the other main guards are kind of finished a different way. And so, if he continues to play at that level, he is undoubtedly their leader and their best player. Um, so they've got a shot. I mean, they've got a shot absolutely at becoming kind of the next best team. They've got a shot at usurping Cheshire
mm.
in relation to where they are in the league. They've probably got a shot at Newcastle, albeit they're 5 games behind, but it depends on what Newcastle's injuries are going to
Yeah,
be.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they're not going to win. They're not going to win all of their games, and things are going to go wrong. But they're in the honeymoon period at the moment.
Mm,
Um, but overall, if you're a Manchester fan, it's like, yeah, finally, okay, here we go.
yeah, yeah.
I'm a Newcastle fan. You just basically ring up the doctor's 8 o'clock in the
Well,
morning.
yeah,
Can I have an
yeah,
appointment, please?
yeah,
What's going on?
yeah. Let's go to the final game. Cheshire Phoenix 90, London Lions 105. No Scott Grayson for Cheshire. Obviously, Soko's still out. Adebayo was
Forgot
out
that. I was
as
watching
well.
this game and it never clicked with me that he wasn't there, but now it has clicked with me.
Yeah, he was there. He's had a wrist injury for
Yeah,
a
yeah,
bit and still
yeah.
struggling with it. Austin into the starters. 9 points for him in the first quarter. It was pretty tight.
Yeah, and it kind of similar. I mean, similar to Rob's vituperation at the end of the first quarter. Yeah, so Peter Bozic getting gradually more discombobulated and frustrated with his
Yeah,
team
yeah, yeah.
as the game went on, and it was for the. I felt like it was almost like the game I commentated on a couple of weeks ago, which is you got to get back. It's like the first, it's like you can coach as much as you want,
Yeah, yeah.
right? You can play at the coach at the highest level, you can play at the highest level. But
Mm,
if you've got a team who is literally putting the ball in your basket or attacking your basket 4 seconds after you've scored,
yeah,
it's tough to coach that because all
yeah,
you can do is get your players to get back and kind of instill that degree of urgency in them. And he struggled, and he was in that kind of frame of mind for most of the game where he was not comfortable because
yeah,
he knew that they were giving up just a little bit too much to put the game away.
yeah,
And a little bit. And Cheshire came out and they played with certainly a little bit with like they'd been refreshed, I think.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They played with a little bit more bounce to them. Skylar's making plays and defending at the defense was certainly a little bit better. But having said that, the very first play of the game, Skylar cheats for a steal on Begovic and he goes
Yeah,
down
yeah,
the middle. So
yeah.
it's still not great, and they still gave up 105. Um,
I
but
thought they were better though.
I thought they
I
were
thought,
better. I agree. And that's London. It's not giving it
yeah,
122 to Bristol.
yeah,
They are. I thought they were better, and I thought they were more locked in. Hate the phrase, but
yeah.
more together, and they looked like they'd been reset a little bit.
Mm,
But without Scott Grayson, and that's something you've just pointed out to me. That's tough
mm,
because they don't really, the guys that they've got coming off the bench are role players.
mm,
Clunius is a role player. Ulf is a role player. Rock is a role player.
mm,
And London have so much size. I mean, Dallaire and Hadzi Begovic in particular, they're finishing at the rim,
mm,
which is just something that Cheshire don't answer for. What I will say is Peterson, I thought was very. I mean, point guards are having good games against Cheshire, to be fair. But Peterson, I thought, really is beginning to fit in and really looked solid in this game and making the right play at the right time. And Holden struggled a little bit against the size of London, and Cheshire needed Holden scoring.
mm,
And against the size that they could throw at him, be it Rye in the post or then the big guys behind him, he struggled to kind of play his bully ball
mm.
when it mattered. They still scored 90 because he got up
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
Timberlake scored the ball really well. Timberlake's a really explosive scorer. But they're giving up three figures. They're not going to win many.
Yeah, yeah. A second quarter was more of the same, to be honest with you. 2 point game at halftime. And then Dallaire 3, Stuckman 8 points, London a 16-5 run to lead 54-65. Another 9 unanswered near the end of the third quarter. 5 more from Stuckman had them out to 63-81. They won the quarter 36-19, and that was the game.
Yeah, and Stuckman is a real weapon for them playing in that role because Bozic can use him whichever way he wants. And in this game, he played him alongside Dallaire. And effectively, Dallaire's the four-man, Stuckman's a five-man, which means that Stuckman is pick and popping every time. Now, I say that a lot. What a pick and pop is basically when you set the screen, pick is another word for screen. When you set the screen or the pick, instead of rolling towards the basket, you just kind of separate yourself and rotate out to the three-point line, and hopefully your man is too fixated on the basketball so he can throw you the ball at the top of the key. And if you're a shooter, you'll shoot the three. And
Mm,
Stuckman did it twice, and they weren't ready for it. They hadn't adjusted to the fact that he was now the five man. He got two wide open threes at the top of the key, and that's automatic for him. And that's a weapon which Bozic can kind of deploy at any time he wants because he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to. Tanner Stuckman doesn't have to kind of do what he had to do for Caledonia, which was a lot of the dirty work or posting up or rebounding or anything like that. He's basically playing behind Dallaire, Hadzabegovic, and Soko.
mm,
Soko's not there, which means that Bozic can use him as kind of that weapon. and he's far enough down the scouting report whereby teams are going to forget about him a little bit.
mm, mm,
And I thought that's what happened in this game. I thought he broke the game open, but he broke the game open doing what he does. And because they have these 2 point guards in Peterson and now Holloway, who basically aren't looking to score the ball themselves. They're looking to set people up, like to run what Bozic wants. Um, that means everybody else stays interested and everybody else is getting the right touches at the right time.
mm,
So yeah, I did think that that kind of broke the game open. They're just it's going to be tough for Cheshire because they're just a little bit athletically outmatched now that the big guns have brought out all the size and athleticism that they have.
mm.
You know.
They did have their usual flurry of threes, a bit of a comeback in the fourth quarter, but they only got it to 8 points. Never quite looked like getting enough stops to get all the way back.
Yeah, and again, it was just enough to keep Bozic twitchy, I
Mm,
thought. And I know when someone's twitchy at Cheshire because I've been there.
mm,
You can just see the frustration of, playing wonderfully team orientated basketball and getting a layup for your big guy for the 18 seconds of the shot clock, only to be dribbling the ball back up the court 6 seconds later.
yeah, yeah,
It is devastating. It's like, Jesus, when are these M's gonna go? When are these gonna go away?
yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah,
it used to be like that at Surrey as well with
yeah,
Quincy Taylor and those
yeah,
guys. When
yeah,
the
yeah.
games that we lost at Surrey, it's like, when are these so and so's going to go away?
Mm,
You just can't get a stop. You just want to put it away in that gym and kill the energy. But to be fair, it's going to be a tough team to beat London over 40 minutes. I'm still on that.
mm,
A really tough team to beat them over 40 minutes in the games where Buzzett shortens his rotation a little bit and just plays the guys he really needs to play. Um, they are the team that is, I think, improving week by week, and they've just got so much size.
mm,
They'll still have games, where the shots don't go in, but I think they've just about got enough
mm,
to deal with that. And watching them play Sheffield, I think they've got to play Sheffield twice more in London and Sheffield. Or I think London would beat them twice already, haven't they?
mm,
Watching them play Sheffield will be a really intriguing battle of styles.
mm,
Because you're going to have, McGill and Nixon, the guards, and kind of your mobile athletic centre in Clay. But you're going to have playing against, you're playing against defensive guards and your big athletic centre in
mm.
Haksabekowicz and Dallaire and Soko and that. So that'll be fascinating games.
Timberlake 24, Austin 21.7 assists, Holden 16 points, 10 rebounds. They were 11 of 29 from three.
Mm,
Stuckman 7 of 9 shooting for 20 points, Delaire 17, Rye 15. They were 10 of 19 for three, so that's
yeah.
even better. They were 23 of 35 from the free throw line, which sort of torpedoed their chances of pulling away a little earlier. It was 52-36 points in the paint as well.
Oh yeah. By the way, if Chris is listening, you were talking about Chris being not one of the most experienced
Mm,
refs in the league.
yeah.
Yeah, I think he missed a free throw line violation in the first half.
Oh,
Just sure
really?
you'll check it back.
Okay, I'm sure he
Yeah,
will.
I think it was a new guy. Holloway stepped over well before the ball went through the rim. Not
Okay.
that I'm being picky.
Let's quickly run through the table before my battery dies. London are 16 and 4, Sheffield 14 and 4, Leicester 13 and 4, Newcastle 10 and 8, Cheshire 8 and 11, Surrey are 6 and 12, Manchester 6 and 13, then Bristol 5 and 9, and Caledonia 2 and 15.
5 and 9, was that not a Brian Adams song? Is that not a Brian Adams song somewhere? Five and
Five,
Dime.
five
Oh
and
yeah, yes.
dime, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
Five and
Yeah,
Dime. My
yeah,
bad.
yeah, yeah,
That was the
yeah.
summer of '69. I'm getting
Summer
confused
of
with.
'69,
Let me see. So we've got some contemporaneous music references
yeah.
for the over 60s. So you get everything you want from this
Yeah, yeah,
garbage,
yeah.
don't you? Um, Aye. So Bristol still got 18 more games. Whew.
Yeah, every time I look at the table, I go, man, they've got a lot of games to
What was
play.
it, the beginning of March?
Yeah, yeah.
When did the season finish? 27th of
20,
April.
27th or something like
Eight
that.
weeks. Got
Yeah,
18
yeah,
games in eight
yeah,
weeks.
yeah, yeah. It's a lot.
Boy, good luck. Those guys earning their money.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. Yeah, I've got nothing more to say.
no.
We'll see. It'll be fun once the top three stop playing each other again.
Mm,
I'm interested that Newcastle have to play Sheffield 4 times as well.
mm,
So that's Sheffield probably won't be crying for Michael Corrow's ankle.
No,
I think that's probably right.
no, no, no.
Sometimes it's who you've played when you get the injuries
Yeah,
does
exactly.
make a
Yeah,
difference,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
If you run across teams at the right time, that can be different. That can be two or three wins
yeah,
in a season if it works the right way for you. But after you play the games, that's the way it
yeah,
works.
yeah. We'll call it a night. We'll probably maybe try and do it on a Sunday next week
Outstanding. Yeah, I might remember.
after the
I might
final.
remember a bit more and not have to fill with just long words and rubbish.
Yeah, yeah. You're going to have to watch Newcastle London for me because I won't be able to see it. But
No,
I'm sure you'll watch it.
that's actually
London
my
Newcastle.
last rant
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
season. My last rant.
yeah,
Absolutely outrageous that there's a game. There's two things. There's a game
yeah.
on.
I think you had this rant 2 weeks ago,
Did
but
I?
go on again.
Sorry, a league game on the final, and also
Yeah,
that game happens to be 2 days before Newcastle are playing in Denmark
yeah,
in
yeah.
the final.
You did have this rant.
Did I? Well, I'm very
Watch
sorry.
it back. I think it was 2 weeks ago. It might
I
have been three,
apologize.
but
It remains outrageous. It remains
at
utterly.
least you're consistent, Dave.
Yeah,
They were the
thank you.
same 2 points then.
Absolutely. Well, I've only been going for an hour and 40 minutes now.
Yeah, yeah,
We've got to pad this rubbish out,
yeah,
haven't we?
yeah. We do indeed.
We go.
So we'll be back with more of this rubbish next week, hopefully on a Sunday, but barring a five overtime cup final or something like that. But enjoy whatever games you watch, even if it is London versus Newcastle, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
These guys.